Hey, good morning, world. It's Patrick Lovell coming at you on Monday, March 27th at approximately 10 a.m. my time. And this is going to be a little bit of an experiment because unfortunately I left my computer somewhere last night. And so I've got to film with my iPhone and I'm doing it handheld. So if it seems a little jiggly and a little bit weird, I apologize. I'm going to have to go short, which is probably a good thing. You know, yesterday I launched my truth bomb with a pretty ambitious, hopeful objective to have it shared literally 1,300 times. That would realize 1,300 investors at $13 a piece, and I made the case for that. And I think I got, as of now, like 47 views, maybe 7 likes, and not quite the traction I was hoping for. So if you wouldn't mind, please hit like and subscribe. And if I'm winning you over in some capacity, please consider sharing this. Please consider investing. And I'm going to keep coming at this and trying to win you over because, I mean, my God, everything is at stake. And my reasoning is sound on this. And there has got to be a connection between millions of us because of everything that's unfolding before our eyes right now. And the longer that you resist, the longer that you wait, the more you guarantee your own, quite frankly, disaster and suffering because it's coming. And if we position ourselves quickly and rapidly with the truth and gain traction, the whole idea of this endeavor, this ambition, this objective, this crusade to purge corruption is because nobody else is going to do it. Look, there's this sort of, reference, if you will, as it relates to regulatory capacity and bodies and government and revolving door and how things work that basically underpin the corruption that I'm revealing to you. And it's called capture. So there's regulatory capture by people that have the interests of the financial system that they're going to spend through a revolving door into a high-paying job to make sure that the financial system gets away with what it is that I continue to reveal to you. The same could be said for media. It is completely captured by the corporate sort of interests and everything that aligns with that to make sure that they don't reveal these truths that I'm revealing to you either, because if they do, then they're going to, in their minds, which I think is a complete mistake, but that leaves the door open for what it is that I'm trying to achieve here, is that they're cutting their nose off to spite their face. What they're doing is they're lying to their audiences to be able to prop up their, advertisers to hide the largest criminal conspiracy and cover-up in history that never ended. So the reason I wanted to drop this truth bomb this morning, I want to tie together some things that are extremely important that are happening right now that underscore, once again, everything that is on display in these truth bombs and everything that is all around us that I'm trying to get your attention to, and why you have to dive in and join us. If we're together, if we join in the millions, we can create a tidal wave, a populist tidal wave crusade to purge corruption. And we have to do that. And it's literally on display right now in Israel. Okay? So it's amazingly how, what a lightning rod the state of Israel is for so many people in so many different directions. But right now, at this very moment, the citizens of Israel are, for the first time, in my opinion, over the course of the last 20 years, rising to thwart the autocratic positioning and moves of the Netanyahu government that is trying to further erode the independence of the judiciary. Now, for those of you in the United States that understand how corrupt our own judiciary is, you can certainly roll your eyes and you can certainly go, well, even if there is a sort of tinge of independence from of the judiciary, that they're going to continue to work on behalf, of course, our financial system that I'm trying to reveal to everybody else. And you would be correct in that cynicism, in that really insane frustration at that. But I want to make the point that, look, first of all, kind of going back to my truth bomb from yesterday, I brought up the whole notion of corruption births fascism, and all of the sort of incremental things that take place that we can observe throughout history that led to the the rise of Hitler and the Reich and everything else, which of course led to the creation of the State of Israel. Now, if you know your history, you know that Israel was the birth of the exodus of presumably Moses that led, the tribes of Israel out of the bondage of Pharaoh into the milk and honey of Israel, if you believe in, the biblical sort of rapprochement there. But, really in terms of the actual evolution in historical evolution, in the 5 books of, Moses, you've got literally Exodus into Deuteronomy. And so that's like liberty into the law. And the whole notion of, outside of the 10 commandments and, the first 4 commandments and, pursuit of everything is for God. Outside of that, there are common sense, ways society is supposed to function. And the notion and the ideals of the 5 books of Moses was to create a state that was structured based on the law. And that's what happened in early antiquity. And then it led to, quite frankly, I guess we could, and I don't want to debate this all day, every day, and, because I actually don't know enough about it, but just, kind of pulling from the surface, at the time of Jesus, of course, who was a rabbi, and he was rebelling against what I think we could probably infer was corruption at the time. The whole idea of throwing out the money changers from the sacred temple was because they were staining, the sacredness of the spirituality of, what was, Judaism. And that, of course, led to everything that happened from that point forward to Christianity and so forth. And I, this truth bomb is to try to reconfigure, religious history so much as to kind of set the standard, set the table, if you will, for, of course, during the Holocaust, after the Great Depression, the rise of the Third Reich, the rise of Hitler, after, of course, the calamity of the Great Depression and everything that it led to the wholesale, slaughter of the Jewish people on an industrial scale called the Holocaust. It was the first time in history that an entire set, of society was targeted for absolute extermination. There has always been wars to try to thwart and destroy and murder and all of those things to get complete power and to, potentially, evict, if you will, different sorts of competitors in any different historical scenario. But in this particular case, the Holocaust was to exterminate Jews. And as a result, after the end of World War II, when the concentration camps were liberated and the Jews that had survived, basically had 2 choices at that time. There were a lot of Jews in Russia, but there was pogroms the whole time in Russia, and there was all sorts of situations that were, less conducive to, to a thriving, ability to survive after the Holocaust. Other than 2 potential choices at that time period, which was, of course, the United States and then Israel. And then FDR, and, well, even beforehand, but after as well, I'm assuming, and you don't hear as much about it after FDR, but they turned away the Jews. And the Jews escaping the Holocaust and all of the horrors of that time period, many of them had to, without even any choices, had to relocate to Israel based on all of the historical and the biblical context, and many of you would refer to that as Zionism and things of that nature. But the earliest settlers of Israel at this time period were basically socialist, and they lived on kibbutzes, and they were all about shared cooperation, in a vertical, and they set down roots, and at first they were living, I think. I don't know if, it depends on what history you read, but I think, in the early stages of this time period, actually before the influx of everything that took place after the Holocaust, they were living, side by side with the Palestinians. And then, those sort of tensions rose further, and then, more settlers, and then more, of course, conflict, and then everything that was going on with the Balfour Declaration and, England and everything else post-World War II, there became, the state of Israel that had to fight for independence, quite frankly. And in doing so, they created a democracy. And so from really the 50s on, Israel heralded itself as the only democracy in the Middle East, and justifiably so, because it really was. But over the course of the last 20 years, and by democracy too, by the way, I mean the foundation and the creation of the rule of law is supreme. And then, of course, a lot of the things that transcend from democracy, which is a more equitable sort of endeavor, if you will, that can be ultimately, at least in theory, conflict solved through the law, right? Anyway, it's a hornet's nest of problems in Israel and the Middle East and the Palestinians and the Jordanians and the Syrians, and that whole era has been forever, has been time immemorial. I mean, in the early days before even, let's just go back to antiquity with the Romans and everything that transpired after the fact. I mean, Jerusalem in Israel was in the middle of a hotbed of, trade. And so there was always different factions battling over control of that area with the Assyrians and the whole Mediterranean trade and everything else, which was also part of the grand story. But, the point being, given what the Israelis are rising to show at the moment, which we haven't seen in over 20 years, and I've been extremely concerned about it, was, ever since 9/11 and Netanyahu and sort of this bulwark, if you will, against Middle Eastern terrorism, if you would think that in terms of neocons in the United States and this sort of relationship between Israel and the United States, which has evolved, an incredibly skilled military as well as intelligence. But that intelligence in Israel has been very, very problematic over the course of the last, let's call it 15 years. Maybe freelancers that may have been trained within Mossad, start these really sophisticated intelligence gathering agencies that become freelance, and a lot of them have been working for, the Qataris and the Saudis and others, and and it's been antithetical to democracy. Not to mention the rise of Netanyahu and the further sort of let's say the power vortex of Netanyahu. A lot of it, which was of course manifested because of major financial commitment from the likes of Sheldon Adelson, for example, and the settlers and everything else, because of course Israel gave back the occupied territories to the Palestinians, and then everything went forward from there, and it's just been an absolute mess. And then it seems like the Israelis, from my perspective, have been much more radicalized towards, we would say, authoritarianism, because of the nature of, the kind of evolution post 9/11. And I think, very, very catastrophically bad decisions on behalf of Netanyahu's government, within the sort of vortex of the bad actors in the United States. I mean, because there's this consortium, and I laid this out in my first documentary called Forward 13, Waking Up the American Dream. When you peel back everything that's happened post 9/11 and what actually created 9/11, and you look at the Middle East and you look at all of these different facets of the story, it's like, look, man, first and foremost, oil is God, okay? The dollar relies on, I think, in a very, very significant way, Saudi Arabia trading their being the world swing producer, all of their product in dollars, right? And that's problematic in a lot of ways because starting in the late 90s, early 2000s, we were pivoting to a renewable energy future, but boy, that got freaking derailed because of what happened in 9/11 and 20 years of wars that have led to the military-industrial complex, double down and corruption all over the place there. Not to mention what I'm paralleling here with the rise of the Netanyahu government and all things things with the Palestinians. But the Israeli people are coming out into the streets and saying enough is enough. We're not going to autocratic rule. Now, I don't know all the details. I don't know as much about the details as I do about what's happened in our country based on all of the financialization that I continue to reveal to you. But they are fighting in the streets to prevent Netanyahu and to further undermining the independence of the judiciary, which is something that we're not doing, okay? But here's the thing that we don't even understand in the United States, for example, is that tied to this financialization, and I'm gonna try to bring this to, I got to make this point because I haven't done this in some time. A lot of the people that are socialists or self-proclaimed communists, always go, capitalism is the problem. Look, it's not capitalism. It's not even remotely industrial capitalism. This is financial capitalism, okay? Which is predatory capitalism, which is illegal, which is racketeering, which is what we lay out in the con, www.thecon.tv. Why? Because there are laws that prevent exactly what this machine has done. This machine is a massive smoke and mirrors, diabolical deception that has basically trapped everybody into debt bondage based on all sorts of deceptive acts and practices, which are just lying, stealing, and thieving and cheating to be able to hit a number, which is, you could go further into the scheme of it all, but it's just money making money on money through lies. That's it. And it's short term, and ultimately in the end, it has just gone to, basically making the rich much richer against every foundational basic structure of free market. It's just simply theft. And that's all it is. Now, are all the rich people in this country in on it? No, not in architecting it or designing it. They're beneficiaries of it. And there could be a lot of rich people, for example, who could be athletes, who could be, musicians and artists and movie stars and that sort of thing, who have absolutely nothing to do with this. But their money makes money a lot of the times on this insane financial engineering, this financialization, which in my opinion is suicide. Why? Because if you don't, the very basics is just hollowed out the American ability through industrial capitalism to create what we consume. We don't do that anymore. We've moved into hyper globalism based on these global supply chains that we found how fragile that can be under certain circumstances during COVID. But in the end, what you need to understand, and what I'm trying to get to, is that capitalism and democracy, the only similarities between the two, supposedly, is choice. And let's say consumerism or in who you vote for, right? But as we're finding out, both of those have been perverted to such an extent that they've been turned inside out. For example, in the case of Israel, where you have Israel has been the self-proclaimed democracy, since since it became statehood in the 50s, right? I can't remember the exact date that Israel became a nation state, but it was all premised on a democracy. And then, of course, now it's some sort of hybrid technological, military, industrial, autocratic thing where they're literally trying to suppress thousands of years of what the Jewish people have been about from the days of Moses, which is the law, which is amazing to see the Israelis come out and fighting this. And it looks like they may have stalled Netanyahu at the moment, and I don't know what's going to come next, but it's an illustration of what the Americans that I'm trying to get you to do, we, the people, to overcome the corruption of by and for the corporation to get our country back of by and for the people. And the only way we're going to do that is if we understand that predatory financial capitalism is suicide, and that we hollowed out the industrial base so that we're basically just feeding through the full faith and credit of the United States unbelievable amounts of money to the most rich on high, which are the pharaohs. That's the whole thing is just fucking ridiculous. It's inside out perversion bullshit. And what I'm trying to get you to understand is that the corruption is so bad in this country. To go back to this comparison to what's going on with the judiciary. Of course, I've lectured, I've truth bombed many times that the entire purpose of the United States is separation of powers, where you have the independence of the judiciary, the independence of the legislative branch, the independence of the executive branch, and they all have to compromise to basically make the engine run, right? But, the big picture of that is you're supposed to have free markets, but you're also supposed to have the law. And the equilibrium of all of that has got to be underscored by character. It has to be underscored by honesty in markets. Otherwise, the whole thing's a shit show that turns into this fucking diabolical fucking devil in the shadows. The greatest trick the devil ever played was to convince the world he didn't exist. And they piss on your head telling you it's rain because they think you're a fool. The bottom line is, if you understand the facts, which is what I have ad nauseum, I've got hundreds of hours of this information on camera. I've got thousands and thousands of pieces of documentation evidence that we put together. The first part that shows exactly how the shit all came together at www.thecon.tv. And then, of course, I've done the new Untouchables on the Real Progressives that show what happened in the aftermath of the 2008 great financial crisis. But if you're just starting to come into this, you got to understand that the judiciary of the United States, who was supposed to be separate and be able to, make rules in court based on the law, have not been doing that. So here we are with media taking a look at Trump and putting him on, against the jury, the grand jury of the American people, with these fucking polarized, manipulative bastards in media that want to, hyper focus on one guy, Donald Trump, with all of the rules that are on display that he has broken, which has broken the law through all sorts of lying and cheating and stealing and grifting and everything else. But most importantly, for this particular analogy, his documentation fraud, okay, that he tried to do in the elector certifications, in which he basically had people sign other people's signatures to try to win the electoral college, okay, which is fucking ideas that he got because of what happened during the 2008 great financial crisis. Because, Trump mortgages, he was deeply involved with predatory lending. He got nailed for that with Trump University. Same thing was happening at Trump mortgages, because he was a small player with all the big players that were lying on documentation fraud, what we call liar's loans, ninja loans, where people with no income, no asset, would make up their income, make up their tax payments, and basically get loans approved to buy fucking assets that the appraisals were hyperinflated because the lenders wanted everybody to fucking get higher appraisals on it because of high yield spread premium. Everybody was getting paid to lie, cheat, and steal, lie, cheat, and steal, and then they unloaded all these derivatives on the world, basically based on lies. Okay? And like I said yesterday, Jon Snow said, when the world gets to the point where there's nothing but lies, all you have is better and better lies. There is no purpose. There is no structure. There is no foundation. There is no truth. So I won't do it. That's where I am. That's where I'm trying to get you to be. So if you understand the lay of the land in financial predatory capitalism by our financial sector behind the scenes, which you don't understand is just simply stealing trillions of dollars from you and me and everybody you can see, and giving it to the rich to cycle it. And that's all we've been doing since 2013. I mean, it's insane. The socialists out there who blame capitalism don't seem to understand this is socialism, but for the rich. I call it corporate fascism undergirded by a criminal syndicate that uses socialism to guarantee, with the full faith in the United States, the backdoor guarantee to a criminal mafiocracy. That's what it is. And that's where the law comes in. And if the law understands all of the things that I have and the people have, then they can't hide in the shadows like they've done with using tens of millions of illegal documentations to foreclose illegally on millions of people because they're guaranteed by the full faith and credit of the United States. The insane diabolical betrayal is fucking biblical, okay? And ironically, I'm talking about Israel, and I'm talking about Israel being, of course, the nation of Jews who are struggling to understand the difference, between democracy and a state of a specific religion, Zionism, in light of everything that created the Holocaust and everything that came after. So, I mean, look, people, get out of the fucking perception world, okay? Get out of fucking think of a hook-nosed fucking Shylock that's stealing from everybody. Because in this day and age, he could be a white guy, a woman, a black guy, an Asian guy. It could be anybody, okay? It's the system, all right? It's the system of theft. It's the system of financial predatory capitalism, which is suicide to any, it's a parasite, okay? And you don't have to be a worm living in the carcass of a dead fucking whale of democracy. You can become invigorated. You can become enlightened. You can become a champion of liberty, truth, and justice for all, which is what the whole fucking system is about. I think it's all coming to a head. I think shit's about to hit the fan. I think that, look, there's trillions upon trillions of dollars of derivatives that are loaded up on all sorts of commodities right now. They call it the everything bubble. So in 2008 it was a housing bubble. Right now it's the everything bubble, because we've spent trillions upon trillions upon trillions of hyperinflating assets that the government's buying back through the Fed, which of course the hybrid confusion there, to benefit the most wealthy. It's just theft. It's fucking theft. And it's the engineers of the financialization that are the guys doing it, okay? And yeah, there are Jews involved. There's no question. And you guys should be incredibly ashamed of yourself. You disgust me. And I'm so incredibly disappointed. I'm so incredibly disappointed by anybody who understands anything about the Holocaust, who would play roulette with what the fucking world is involved with now, first and foremost. But like I said before, there are so many Jews that have done all the right things to bring these truths to light, to bring justice to bear, as we're seeing the Israelis fighting Netanyahu to keep their judiciary independent. Because the law was born from Exodus. That's the whole point of the Ten Commandments. That was the whole point of the mythology, the story, the biblical story of what, say it like this, Muhammad believed that, Abraham and Moses and Jesus, all of which were Jews, were prophets. Okay? The transcendence between all of this stuff is global, and it's history, and it's been ever since. People, there's a right and wrong way to do things. That's why we have the law. If you cheat on your wife, you should be held accountable. If you steal from your school and embezzle from people, you should be held accountable. If you hold up a woman on the street corner with a gun and you steal her purse and you get caught, you should be held accountable. On and on and on and on and on. Who the fuck doesn't know this? But what you don't understand, and why I say what you don't know is killing us, is the magnitude of the theft of this circus of these financial hyenas that basically use the concept of capitalism, which is, okay, everybody can come to the market and try to figure shit out, and it's up to you to become successful. Okay, that's what was born out of the revolutions against aristocracies and monarchies, but that's not what it is now. We've come full circle. As Yanis Varoufakis says, he calls it techno-feudalism. It's feudalism. But it's also every other authoritarianism under the sun, and it's always the same thing that happens throughout history when a small group of people have absolutely control over society. The nature of the United States, based and premised on free markets and democracy, is to have the laws to create scenarios where we can all function within, and where hopefully the best rise to the top. That's really the idea, and we should definitely have social safety nets like the New Deal, and we should have job guarantees program. Look, there's all sorts of stuff that we absolutely have to do on the other side of this, because, look, again, we've spent $70 trillion since 2009 to 0.001% of the people. Are you fucking kidding me? How in the dark are you? And why would you stand and sit on your feet and pretend this doesn't exist? I need you, if anybody, if you believe in your future, if you want opportunity for yourself, if you want to thrive, if you believe in yourself, if you want your children to have a world that they can inherit to move forward, if you want society to thrive instead of die based on betrayal, then please, by all means, do nothing. Otherwise, join me. If you, me, and everyone you see who isn't a Nazi, who believes in dignity, integrity, liberty, and sustainability blend with unity, then we can defeat tyranny. And that means you have to join me. I'm not an autocrat. I'm all about democracy. I'm all about dynamism. I'm all about free people being free, okay? Trust me, I'm all about liberty and justice for all. You do not have to worry that I'm some sort of cloaked Machiavellian son of a bitch that's got some autocratic tendencies that are going to tell you how to fucking live your life. Like I said yesterday, man, it's all about liberty. To me, the confluence in the river of life is you got to figure out your own shit. We all have to figure out our own shit. But in the meantime, There's some major things we can do collectively as a society, and I can tell you the first and most important prescient thing that we can do together is to rise and unify in a populist tidal wave movement to purge corruption, to light liberty and justice for all, to create and usher in the clean New Deal. We're not going to be able to do shit unless we get rid of corruption. Starting with, I mean, look, we're fighting two fronts at the same time. We're fighting corruption and we're fighting fascism. Why? Because corruption births fascism. I'm in the vein of the founding fathers, minus I'm not a landowning aristocrat that has a bunch of slaves, nor would I be. I would have been an abolitionist. And I would probably have been a merchant, quite frankly. I'm a competitor. I like to fucking win. I like the dynamism of living, breathing, and thinking and dreaming about how to do things in a way that are going to be productive and awesome. And if they're good and you give people what they want and they want to buy it, hey man, I'm all about the freedom of that market. You know what I'm saying? And if you do well and people are down, then let's move. But this is a different situation. The last thing I'll say about this is you have to understand that the reason why you have to put skin in the game, the reason why you have to put money into this is because if we don't galvanize and we don't create millions of people that put literally $13 into this based on everything that I've been, telling you why you would put $13 into this based on, the history of the United States and the revolution and what it means downstream and throughout everything that, joins us now in 2023, that if we had millions of people do that, if we got to 13 million people, and again, the great financial crisis wiped out at least 100 million people around the world. 13 million people is a small percentage of that. If 13 million people donated $13, we'd have $169 million in the treasury, the war chest. I would create, again, and what I will create once we get there is, and there's different markers of what we can do along the road, but I would create a revival tour with all of the information I have to where we, like Bob Geldof and Live Aid, go out and we show what the fuck's actually going on throughout the United States, building a tidal wave to get to Washington, D.C. And on the Washington Mall in the shadow of Abraham Lincoln, which probably is my favorite president, quite frankly, now that I think about it. I mean, there's been some really good ones. I'm on the side of Thomas Jefferson, Abraham Lincoln, Teddy Roosevelt, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, John F. Kennedy. Those would be my favorite presidents, okay? And every one of them is in order to form a more perfect union. And I didn't include President Obama in there because President Obama betrayed us. Yeah, would I have liked to have seen him become FDR as an African American? You bet your ass I did. I voted for him twice, and I certainly thought that's what he was going to do. He absolutely betrayed us. And that's what got us Trump. And so in this national revival barnstorming tour that's like a Live Aid in every city that we finally get to Washington, D.C. to reveal these truths. The reason we've got to do that is because I'm telling you, the entire system, whether it's media, whether it's our government, whether it's our judiciary, they all hid what it is. And I'm telling you, they wanted to throw it in the fucking garbage. They consider you expendable. I'm not expendable. Fuck them, fuck tyranny, fuck corruption, fuck fascism, liberty and justice for all. That's who I am. Join me, and together we will win. Rise, unite, revolt. Onwards and upwards.